Today on the breakdown, 2,200 euros, maybe for Euro, but not for Mio, because that's 55,000 euros for first place in this tournament, and there's only 3 players left. There's money to be won, and we are going to encounter, much like Red Riding Hood did in the forest, a bit of a curious thing. Is this my grandma? Or is it not? I don't know. It could be my grandma. She's got a hairy face and big teeth, and I think it might be my grandma. I'm going to go hang out with her. That's sort of what happens in this hand. That's a basic breakdown of this hand. And we're excited to share it with you because I would say there are curious decisions on almost every street. And saying curious, I'm probably underselling it just a little bit, just a tiny, tiny bit, much like the Little Red Riding Hood did when she told the story later. She undersold it, let's be honest. But I don't know about that chick. Anyway, it's The Breakdown with Grant Dennison and Jonathan Levy.
Hey. First time, no rehearsal. I say fuck the second take. 90s baby scratching on vinyls until the record.
See, you did a couple things there. One, you're not really explaining to the listener what our value add is. You're telling them honestly and truthfully that they can just go read Little Red Riding Hood if they don't remember the plot by heart, as every good little boy does.
Everyone does.
If they could just go read it and know exactly what happens in this hand, and we would have no commentary that would help at all or make any difference. So that's not good from a business perspective. I just want to give you that feedback on the air because we show you warts and all on this podcast.
Right. We never edit anything. That's true.
Also, you started with the money involved in this hand where it is like notably unimpressive compared to almost every other tournament hand that we've ever done.
Yeah.
So you're like talking about like, oh, $55K for first. Like that's cool. That's a decent amount of money, but like that's why are you leading with that?
Dude,
why?
You got to do the work here. You're so close to it, and yet you miss it by a mile. The way I am talking about the money, and it's as if it's a thing when it obviously isn't, much like the wolf claiming to be the grandmother and Red Riding Hood falling for it when it really shouldn't be falling for it. It's a total parallel, bro. It's fucking art. It's arty. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's like the end of that movie Inception.
I thought you were going to come up with something better when you started down that track. I really thought it was going to be better. It was like I was optimistic. I was hopeful for that one.
Yeah,
but
I think I sold it.
They're not all first round picks. They're not all first round picks. It's okay.
Yeah,
you know, Nikola Jokic was a second round pick. Maybe that one will age like Jokic, but I don't think so.
I think you're going to look back on this and laugh, but not at me. You're going to laugh with me.
I'll be like, that was the most legendary thing ever said on any forum of any type.
They're going to make a short out of that one, and it's going to go, woohoo! You know, people are going to be like, that could be a podcast. And we're like, it is. It's a podcast.
It is a podcast.
Already.
And
it's a podcast.
Subscribe.
Yeah.
Also, you can send us money. I don't know how.
There's no clear way.
I guess the best way, we don't have like a Patreon or anything, but if you ever see us in public, you can just give us cash.
I will accept money.
That's fine.
I will accept money. I do.
Yeah.
I do. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing weird about that.
So just cash for us. That's the upshot of this. If you see us, that's
I'm
just
actually
a thing.
often at a corner. I'm the guy holding the sign.
Oh, that's you?
Go ahead and give me money there, too. That's cool. It's cool.
All right. So this was suggested by Ruthino, as almost literally everything is.
Not just hands anymore. All suggestions for everything.
This fucking guy. He watches so much poker. He's watching the damn Germany high roller $2,200 Euro side event.
He's into
first place is $55K. Like he's watching poker right now as I'm speaking, almost for sure. He's probably supposed to be doing something else, or he's doing it while doing something else. But he's watching poker. I guarantee it.
What do you think the suggestion box is like at Rutino's place of work? It's just like packed to the gills, and it's only him suggesting. Just like our podcast, basically.
You're saying he's just a ubiquitous suggester.
Yeah.
To do with just poker or us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All suggestions everywhere. He's like, there's a suggestion box. Someone wants my ideas. Let me get a pen. You know, that's
Is that
Rutino.
like a subset of like LARPing, where you just go around a city and try to find suggestion boxes and try to actually make really thoughtful suggestions without much knowledge about what you're actually talking about? Because that would be cool.
I don't know how that's LARPing, but that's a very interesting, weird way to live.
You're LARPing as a person who would make a suggestion in those places, but you don't actually care.
But you're actually making a suggestion, right?
You
as
are.
Opposed,
so you're trying
it's
to
not
embody
really,
it. It's method acting. It's Daniel Day-Lewis. He cobbles shoes in Italy in his time off.
just once. One time he cobbled the shoe.
He cobbled at least a shoe. Do you think he cobbled a left shoe or a right shoe?
It was clearly a right shoe. Did you not see the movie? My Left Foot? My Left Foot?
Why wouldn't he cobble the namesake shoe?
Because his left foot is the thing that didn't work. Actually, it's not true. It's the only thing that did work. But that's the point, isn't it? Because
How is that the point?
Because you want to cobble a shoe that you could just put on that right foot. You never have to think about it again. You can't move it. It's going to fit. If it fits, you're done. That's what you're looking for with cobbled shoes, I think. And also cobbler while we're at it. You know, like a fruity cobbler.
Oh, like a pie.
Yeah. Well, a tart, maybe. Let's move on, maybe. I don't know. I feel like we're sort of in a cul-de-sac of pain right now for the listeners.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cul-de-sac of
I'm
pain.
sorry, everyone.
You should be. All right, so we have 3 remaining. This is the nominal
Yes.
high roller of whatever this German PokerStars sponsored series is of 2,200 euros. So it's a real buy-in. And 55K is real money to win, but, you know.
Wow. Listen to you sell that, but you can't really get behind it, can you? It's a real buy-in. I mean,
Well,
55K,
just, you know,
55K, I guess is. I
I'm
guess I would.
noting-
If I saw it on the ground, I'd consider picking it up at least.
I'm making note of that it is smaller than what we usually talk about on this podcast.
You know, if you
but
didn't do that, maybe people would just be like caught up in the excitement of it. But now,
I think it's worth talking about instead of trying to eschew the things that you think are not what the podcast listeners want. Maybe you should let them decide for themselves, and maybe, just maybe, they think this might be more applicable to their poker life than when we're talking about Jason Kuhn trying to fight off Paul Fua's billions of dollars. Like,
Right.
I think this is probably more applicable.
I'm
to
the one
what
who brought
our
up the money in the
listeners-
beginning, not you. I'm the one who brought it up. Remember, I started the podcast with $2,200, didn't I?
But you were trying to
Oh.
say it was like a lot instead of saying it was notably different.
Right. Right. But if it is a lot to our listeners and meaningful, then that's great. Let's stop arguing about this. We always argue about this. Let's move on. This
We don't
could be a
always argue.
podcast. Right now, this could be a podcast. So, all right.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the hand. 3-handed, right? We're 3 players left, Grant?
Yep. 25K for third, 55K for first, 35K for second. So that's a really like more than double. It's a small field, right? Like it's 2,200 euro and first place is 55K.
Yeah.
So it's one of those small field situations where it's even more inflated with first because of fewer places getting paid and stuff. So we don't know anything about any of these players.
Good.
And that's fine. That's just fine.
We like
They're
it
just
that
guys who play in this thing, which, you know, you have to have either significant income or play money to play with, or be like a pro who is like taking shots at these level things to buy into a 2,200 euro event. And I'm guessing this is not exactly a easy field. You know, it might be like not really well-known players, but it's probably not super soft would be my guess.
Why are you guessing that? What's that based on?
It's a 2,200 euro buy-in. In Germany, it's a side event that's a small field. Like, if it were a large field, I might think differently. But
I mean,
with
you're calling it a small field, but just from the prizes right now, 55, that's over 100,000 in prizes just to the top 3, which means you're looking at least, what, 80 players, 90 players. It's not...
And you call that not a small field?
Well, I mean, it's not 25 players. I don't know. It doesn't mean that it's full of good players just because it's a small field.
Okay, but think about locally. When we have played events locally that are like $1,500 plus, those are tough fields.
I mean, are they tough fields? I'm not saying that they aren't tougher than a $200, but like there's a lot of recreational players in those as well. Are there not?
There are. I'm just saying it's not.
That's all I'm saying.
It's probably tougher than a $400 tournament. You know,
Sure.
that would have a similar prizes.
I agree.
That you might
I
expect.
agree. Yes. Great. We got there.
Like, there's.
I'm just
gotta
saying.
be competent.
Ike Haxton would sit down at any of these tables and be like, "Yum, yum, yum, baby! Like I'm
Of
better
course.
than everyone here by a frickin' mile." Right?
Of course.
That's all I'm saying.
All right.
All
Let
right.
me put it a different way. This is almost certainly tougher than the main event, as on an average player basis.
Okay. I mean, the main event is a very special event in that way, but sure.
or the Monster Stack or the Millionaire Maker or any of those things.
Yeah, right. Where they get 10,000 players or plus.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I'm saying.
Right. Fine.
I think the smallness of the field indicates that at this price.
That is really not a powerful statement, though. That's not a big deal to say that. Sorry.
I think it's different when because we've examined hands from the main event or Monster Stack and stuff where like a player's like a clearly like has no idea what they're doing, and I'm just not expecting that in this field really.
I mean,
as much,
right? Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, let's get to the hand.
I mean, it's good that everyone's going to die one day, and we just wasted another 7 minutes of everyone's lives. So I'm glad for that.
So when you continue to do this podcast after podcast, it's not helpful. It's not useful. Are we here to fucking talk? Is that what a podcast is? Holy shit. Let's continue. First is 55K.
Yeah.
Second is 35K. Third is 25K.
Right.
We got a guy named F Pop, which is sweet.
Yes.
His first name starts with an F and his last name is Pop, so that's all I got.
German rapper. I looked him up.
He's got 865K. He's like Lococo, but Germany. He's got 865K. He is the short stack with nearly 30 bigs.
Okay.
And opens to 60K with 2 red 10s from the button. Everything's good so far.
Yep.
The small blind, who is the second shortest stack, folds. The big blind is a guy named Min Guk. He's got 1.4 million. He's the big stack amongst these guys. He's got 8 of clubs, 7 of diamonds, and he calls.
Yep.
We have no problem with anything anybody's doing so far, right?
So far, it's great.
All right. The pot is 165K. The flop is Jack of clubs, 7 of hearts, 3 of hearts. So Min Guk makes middle pair with his 8-7 off, and 2 10s is pretty good on this board. Doesn't love the jack, but everything else is pretty good.
It's pretty good.
How would you expect this to go?
I mean, I would expect it generally to go check, bet, call.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I would expect too.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Amazing.
Hey!
Min Guk checks. What size do you want to use as pop?
We have
165 in there.
Jack 7-4, right?
3. Jack 7-3. So
Jack
no
7.
open enders available.
2 hearts.
Yeah.
On the board. And there's 165 in there. We shouldn't have to bet a huge amount, although I will say, like, we're going to get a lot of calls, actually, now that I think about it, because there's a million straight draws and pairs and stuff like that. So it makes me want to size up a little bit with 10s just for value. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking if there's 165 in there, I might bet something like 90, 95, something like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Oh, cool.
I like that a lot. I think this is a bit of a more, like you're saying, there's a lot more continues from the big blinds range here than on a lot of boards, even though it's not a super coordinated board. It's coordinated enough to give continues. So we should disincentivize the continues from, like, we want to get rid of stuff like, I don't know, King 10 of clubs if we can. That wouldn't be so bad to get rid of. Deny the equity there.
Mm-hmm. I also think we're going to get calls from anything that's one pair's calling this bet. So lots of worse hands are calling, which I really like about this. Even at 90, right, or 95, like slightly more than half pot. Like, you're getting calls from all one pair hands, like guaranteed, basically, right? And maybe even gut shots might just check call once.
Yeah, but we're okay with gut shots folding.
Sure.
We're this is a type of hand where, like, as long as we don't get check raised, we're pretty okay with most things Min Guk is going to do. Getting check raised is going to suck, and we're going to have to make some decisions.
Sure, that's for tomorrow, though. We worry about today with this stuff. And I just don't think we shouldn't really expect many gut shots to fold on the flop for a relatively cheap price when that guy's the chip leader. Like, mostly that's not going to happen. Yeah. But whatever. We're just going to bet, hope to get called by a worse hand, and rock and roll, right? Sounds good.
Yep. Pop goes small. Pop bets 40K.
Wow.
Into 165.
So crazy small.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this might just be Pop C-bet sizing heads up regardless of board. Who knows?
Okay.
That's what happens.
Fine.
So I'm going to ask the dumb question because I want to explore it.
Sure.
Should we consider check raising as Min Guk?
We should always consider check raising.
Yeah.
How seriously should we consider it? Probably not super seriously on this board in this spot. One, it's really cheap. We have a small hand. We have a hand, but we have a small hand, right? We don't have a set.
Yeah.
We don't have 2 pair. We don't really want to play a big pot right now. But our hand can very comfortably play a smallish pot, right? Like, oftentimes, he's going to bet once. We're going to call. He's going to check all the way through. We're going to win, right? That's going to happen a lot, especially when he's the shortest stack, right? We may want to not go into a big bluff here. He might want to keep his 25 blinds and live to fight another day. So I just don't see a huge reason to check raise here, where we often have the best hand, and we'd hate to be check raising hands that absolutely can't fold to us, like maybe 2 tens can fold, but any jack is going to call for sure. And we make it jammed on, or effectively 3-bet jammed on, whether we're actually jammed on or not, by hands that we're ahead of right now and that we have to fold to, i.e. king, queen of hearts or something like that, right? Which is just going to be really happy to put the money in right now most of the time. And we have to fold, which is just sort of a disaster, I think, to like put more chips in and fold what is a flip, but also currently the best hand.
Yeah, I mean, you've said all of the correct and obvious things, and I agree with all of those. And I don't think I would have even considered this thought if it were a cash game or early in the tournament. Mm-hmm. But this specific scenario, I think, lends itself to unbridled aggression in some cases, even to a technical fault. Is like, it would be hard to find a way to justify it from a technical perspective. Check raising middle pair no kicker here. It's basically like the 2003 find out where your middle pair is BS.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that. I think if, like, there are some spots in poker, and this might be one of them, where Pop and the other guy that's not Minguk have basically the same stack, and it's a pretty serious thing if Minguk check raises and says, like, I can afford this, can you? Do you want to play for all of this? Like, and I think maybe it's kind of like if you flop any equity, there is a lot of value in just taking down all of these pots as much as you possibly can, so you can slowly step on both of their throats over and over and over again.
I would be concerned that we just have so many raises if we're raising middle pair here, right? Because we have so many gutters that we're flopping.
No,
we just have a gajillion raises, right?
We absolutely do. That is my exact point. Like, what are you going to do? Like, most players in most scenarios, when they're this deep in an event, can't handle that anyway. They're not going to adjust correctly. They will let you step on their throat slowly.
I mean, once we start raising a lot of pots, which I assume we've been 3-handed or 4-handed for quite a while. We're 3-handed now, but probably. So if we've been taking this approach, at some point they're either going to stop c-betting, right?
Sure.
Or when they c-bet, they're going to be calling off a lot. Like that's the clear adjustment, right? So that's the problematic,
of,
isn't it?
That's the magic of being like, I'm not saying that Minguk is Phil Ivey, but like, I just watched a video that Phil Galfond made about how Phil Ivey might be the greatest of all time. And a lot of what he's talking about is very kind of nicely saying that Phil Ivey doesn't really have technical skill compared to other people who he is competing with. He's just the best at reading people and understanding exactly situations like this. And he takes the wrong hands and does the wrong lines according to all of the technical analysis. But he always is still there. He's still competing at the highest level.
Right,
because he's so good at that. And I'm not saying Minguk is that guy, of course. But what I am saying is I think there's some value in that type of thought where it's possible that sometimes the overall feel of the table and the situation, especially in a tournament, lends itself to you making huge technical errors in favor of creating an atmosphere where everybody is just going to get the fuck away from you.
Oh, interesting.
And you're just going to slowly win, and they're fighting for second.
Okay. What calls do we have if we're raising middle pair?
We don't have many calls. Is what I'm saying. Like,
okay,
we're gonna be super unbalanced and super technically unsound, and maybe have some like trappy type calls and stuff like that, and maybe. But like, if we manage to take, like, how often is Pop, especially if Pop c-bet size indicates its frequency, which it should indicate that Pop is c-betting a lot when he's betting 40K.
Sure.
He's not going to have that high of a percentage of his range as calls. And if we can get through, like, a lot of the time, even if we have the best hand now, like, what does tens do here? I know it's like kind of the perfect hand. We're against kind of the perfect hand where maybe this works out great and he actually has to fold tens.
Yeah, and maybe.
Especially because he has tens with the 10 of hearts. It's kind of the worst hand to call with, actually, on this board.
I mean, look, if you're up against a guy who's check-raising flops constantly, you call, right? If it's like just been a thing over and over, either you don't bet tens on the flop or you bet call. When you bet one and a third blinds, you 100% call the raise if you have tens. If this guy's been doing this with any frequency at all, where it feels like he's clearly pushing the table around, or you just don't bet it if you're worried about getting check raised and you keep the pot small. Either one of those is fine, but you wouldn't fold.
Just don't think
you wouldn't find a fold on the flop. I think either, like, you're always going to get to the turn with tens if that kind of behavior is being shown a lot.
I agree from a technical perspective and from a game theory perspective, but I just don't think, especially late in tournaments, that most players have that adjustment in them.
That is possible. But I would, you were the one earlier on arguing that it's a small field, it's 2,200, these players are maybe a bit better than what you're going to see in a lot of things. So there's probably going to be some stubbornness at times from some of these players. I don't know if it's from these players, because there's only 3 guys left, and I've never seen any of these guys play either, but there's a reasonable chance that some guys are going to be like me, like sometimes I'm just going to be like, I ain't fucking folding, I don't care. You see me do that in the big spots and tournaments.
Of course.
Right.
And I'm not actually advocating this as the best play. And I feel like I'm putting myself in this position on this podcast a lot, and I think it's something that needs to be done, which is why I keep doing it, which is just to explore the unconventional ideas that you could take. And like, while they might look like some sort of a bad play, sometimes there's some value in that, right?
Absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
I very much do capitalize on spots like this when I play live poker. Just the other day, I raised the river with top when I knew it was no good. Like, it was clearly not for value. I could never be doing this for value. It would be a terrible play to do it for value based on the line that my opponent took. I just knew they had an overpair. It was like 100% based on the player and everything, and I knew they were going to fold if I check raised. So I did, and like, from a technical perspective, that's not very good, if you're playing against GTO Wizard or whatever. But it's good against real humans if you really know what's going on in those spots.
Sure. I mean, look, our goal is not to play GTO, right? Our goal is to make the most profitable plays against the opponents who are in front of us as possible, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think the idea of people being afraid to c-bet, or if they just push through that but then are going to fold a lot to your raises, having that culture of fear at a final table is very useful. I remember being 3-handed in a big spot in a tournament back in the day, and for whatever reason, that was working for me. I wasn't even check raising that much, but still, man, did they gave me walks constantly. I would raise the button, they would just fold constantly. It was weird. It was online. People were commenting on it. Like, lots of people were watching the final 3, and they're like writing about how everyone was afraid of me, and no one knew who I was. It wasn't like I was Jonathan the Poker Guy. This is pre all that, but I still remember that, and how odd it was. And they were so afraid that I was just able to build up my stack with essentially no risk. It was awesome. So there is value in that for sure. I still wonder if this is the hand to do it with, of all the hands we might pick. Even if we're trying to do it a lot and have this with a larger frequency, which I think is not a bad idea when you're 3-handed. I like that. I still think this probably isn't the hand.
I used to have a coaching student that I coached for quite a while who would advocate for this type of play a bit too often, but it was interesting, and I liked that he was thinking this way. He was like, I kind of like to think about it as like a 5-out semi-bluff, which I think is kind of interesting.
Sure.
You get the fold sometimes, and sometimes it works out in a way where you actually have value hand at one point.
I think that's fine. I think you should be doing that, though, on particular kinds of boards and with particular kinds of hands, i.e. hands where you have bottom pair and maybe other kinds of interesting things can come on the turn to be a little scary, where you think bottom pair is less likely to be good because maybe the person bet into 2 of you and not 1 of you, but they're often going to be capped at 1 pair when they bet. Let's say it's ace-5-3, they open an early position. Sure, they can have ace-queen, ace-jack, ace-king, but they rarely have ace-5 or 5s. They can have that some, but they have a lot of the other thing. You have a 3 in your hand. You have 3-4 suited or something like that. You flop a gut or you flop bottom pair. It's usually not good. You probably can't even call a turn bet that often unless you improve, and then it's hard to get any more money. That kind of semi-bluff makes more sense to me than, let's say, on this kind of a board where as soon as we're called, now we're going to have a lot of weird spots. And our hand is and I would hate to chase away a bunch of the hands that might call us on the river if it goes check on the turn and we decide to value bet the river, which we might decide to do, i.e. pocket 6s.
It's kind of hard to find runouts where that's going to feel good.
I don't disagree. It's tough to find runouts. I don't think you're wrong about that. That's fair. I don't know. I like my porridge hot, so if I'd be concerned that this is one of those hands where we might be game theorying or disastering ourselves to some degree, not 100%. I'm not sure what 10s do if we haven't been check raising a lot. I'm not sure what 9s do. I'm not sure what 8s do, if we check raise right here, especially if we haven't been check raising a lot. They may all fold. That's pretty cool. But if we're check raising this hand, we probably are check raising a lot, or we're probably going to start check raising a lot if we haven't been, right? Because, oh my God, we've got so many other hands that make more sense to check raise than this, right? That have less
Of
showdown
course.
value by a mile.
Of course we do.
Yeah.
Which is part of why I wanted to bring it up, because
Yeah.
it is such an outlandish idea from a technical perspective. But I still think it might be profitable in some setups.
I don't think it's unprofitable. I just wonder if it's when you're looking at your whole range. I wonder if that's the part of your range you want to do with it. If you're trying to construct the most profitable range, I think we do want to have some calls as well. Having 0 calls is problematic. People can play well
if you're
against
going
you.
full field player, fuck you. You can't win this tournament, and I can. Like it depends.
mean-
It depends on how your opponents are reacting.
Yeah, of course
really
it does. Of course it
Yeah.
does. But that stuff is pretty easy to adjust to if your opponents are any good at all, right? If they see you doing that, it's not that
Yeah.
hard to adjust, right? So then you need to have a more nuanced strategy. That's all I'm saying. If
I
you're
just
against
do-
good players.
I'm not saying exactly this hand, exactly this spot, but I think it's something that I should be doing more often when I'm deep in tournaments, which I haven't been playing that many tournaments lately. So hopefully I'm deep in tournaments soon. And I think more people should be doing when they're in spots where they're not against like elite crushers. Just like, let's find out if this can work. Let's find out if I can actually just run over this table and everybody else fights for second. It's worth a shot to find out, I think, because you can really cruise sometimes. But of course, it
We're
can
gonna have-
backfire, and you have to be able to adjust. Like,
We're going to have so
There-
many gut shots on this board from the big blind that like makes so much sense to check raise, and when called we can decide to continue or shut down depending on the turn. Just so many opportunities to do that anyway. Gut shots and open enders, just a million of them, right? So I'm
yeah,
overstating,
feeling
but
like
we have a lot.
I'm just not quite activating the muscle for you to understand what I'm saying. Is what I feel.
No,
like.
I just
Because,
don't
like,
agree with you. I think.
No, I know, but your response makes me think that because, like, I understand, I get there's better hands to do it with. I understand that almost every hand is better to do it with. Like, the point is that it might be good to do with everything. It's possible.
I don't think that's true, is what I'm saying back. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't think that's
It's
true.
probably not, but it's worth a probe sometimes, I think.
That's fine. It's fine to probe. I'm just saying, like, as we've now talked about it, I don't agree that we should be doing it with everything or 90 some odd % of things or whatever. That just feels like too high and too easy to adjust to. And I'd be concerned, unless the players are absolutely horrific, that they will adjust to that. And it's a relatively straightforward adjustment, is my thought.
I tend to agree, and
Okay.
I think check calling is the right play here. But I really felt like it was a good idea to explore that.
Sure.
Anyway, Minguk does the normal thing in check calls, so that's not even close to the interesting part of the hand.
I know,
So,
but okay.
what's
No.
the problem, Jonathan?
Nothing.
What's the goddamn
Nothing at
problem?
All. Nothing at all.
Do you
I've
want
got
to
no
talk less on
complaints.
the podcast about talking?
I think I'm just aware that we're all aging at the same rate. Okay.
Okay. I don't know. I exfoliate and moisturize. I might be aging slower than you. So, Minguk calls.
Yeah.
That makes plenty of sense. The pot is 245K. Minguk has 8-7 on Jack 7-3, 2 hearts, unsuited. 2 red 10s for Pop, who is the C-better. The turn is the King of Hearts. So it's an interesting card. Let's see. Minguk does not have a heart in his hand.
Right.
Pop does. He has a 10 of hearts, which could be a bailout, or it could be like, oh, I have to call a river bet and lose now type of spot. We'll see.
Hard to say.
Here's where things start getting weird.
Yep.
Minguk just leads for 50K.
I mean, what the hell is this? What the hell is this bet, dude?
Okay, so how about this? Defend the play. I just put myself, admittedly, I put myself
Okay.
in a spot of defending an idea that was going to be hard to defend. So now I'm going to put you in that.
All
Defend Minguk's play.
Well, by betting 50K, we are probably getting to the river cheaper more of the time than if we were planning on check calling. Now, were we planning on check calling? Probably not.
I mean, if I'm going to be the technical guy this time, obviously we have some check folds on the turn if our opponent continues again, and this would be one of them.
It would seem to be likely one
Yeah.
of them, yeah. I don't disagree. Maybe we feel our opponent just is super stabby on the turn as well, and so we have to call with more made hands. Like we have to let go of some of our draws, but our made something as strong as an 8 here, we just have to call with. We think, perhaps.
Yeah.
So this is a way of getting there cheap. This is also a way of getting some fold equity from hands. This is a really cheap way of getting fold equity from some hands that have equity against us but hate this spot entirely, i.e. ace, queen of clubs. that if it goes check, check, well, geez, like ace queen of clubs can really have good things happen on the river, like can make hands that we just lose to. By betting 50K now, we can fold that out for sure. So that's kind of cool, and it's pretty cheap to do so, right?
Yep.
So I don't hate it from that point of view anyway. Let me see if I can come up with anything else that makes this good.
I think I got something for you.
Okay, great.
I think it's a reasonable representation of a flush. I mean, I think the sizing is a bit odd.
It's so small.
But, yeah, the sizing is a bit odd, but just the act of leading the turn is a pretty typical thing you might do if you make a flush here, because you're going to get a lot of checkbacks from non-flushes.
I agree.
From your opponent.
I agree. I think we would generally bet more if we had a flush, or this almost feels like I'm afraid blocker. Then I've got a great hand. I'm trying to get value. Not saying we would bet 60% a pot. We probably would want to bet small, like you're saying, with the flush here when we lead, right?
Yeah.
But small is like what? Like 35% a pot, 40% a pot, not less than 2 blinds, which feels absurdly small and actually is going to fail at getting folds from hands that we might want to get some folds from, right? Which I don't like at all.
Right, we're going to get called by the Queen of Hearts now, where we don't want that.
Yeah. Now, maybe we can't fold out the Queen of Hearts that often anyway. Maybe we can. But you're right, 50K.
If we bet 140K, Queen of Hearts with nothing else going on is
nothing
kind
else.
of a shit spot. You know?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, like, it's a really weird thing. Ace Queen for 50K without a heart. I'm assuming it folds. It does have a gutter and over, sort of overs, like 1 over for sure, maybe 2. But maybe it just folds just because it's like, I don't even know where I'm at, and I'm never going to know where I'm at in this hand. Like, even if I make a straight, is that good? I don't know. Am I rooting for something here? So maybe it folds. Maybe it doesn't for 50K sometimes. I don't know. It's so cheap. Like, if we size it even somewhat normally, like you're saying, 120, 140, now those hands all fold. A bunch of those hands fold, which feels like for sure. That makes so much more sense. And we're probably better repping a flush, which I prefer to do anyway. Yeah. Also, we define our opponent's hand a little bit better. I guess you could make this argument. Okay, if we're going to bluff the river, we want to bet a size now that we do get called, so we win more when we bluff the river and they fold. And we bet 120, they're just going to fold right now. So that's another good thing about this, and that is kind of cool, right?
I guess.
I don't think I would. The best bluff is when they fold on the river after they've already put money in, not when they fold on the turn and they haven't put as much money in, right?
But the best bluff is really, it depends on the expected value of the situation, right? Like, if you're going to win more chips more of the time by betting bigger now, then that's better.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway,
I wouldn't have bet this much.
Play.
I wouldn't have led, and if I did lead, I wouldn't have bet 50K. I can tell you that. I would certainly bet a real amount.
Right, we played pre-flop and the flop normal. It feels like, okay, from a theory perspective, this is a pretty easy just check, hope he checks back, and if he bets again, we're just going to check fold. And that's
Absolutely.
Fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Super easy.
Yeah. But Minguk leads. I mean, it is weird. The sizing is odd. Obviously, Pop can have a flush. It doesn't make up a huge percentage of Pop's range, but Pop can have a flush. But with his sizing, Pop can call with so many hands, including tens with a 10 of hearts, which is like an easy call.
I mean, if Pop turned a king, he's going to call, right?
Yeah.
Any king, he forced to call for 50K. You make it 120, he's at least, maybe he calls anyway, but it's not free and easy to call now, right? And now you're worried about the river bet. For 50K, you're like, I just have to call right now. I just have to. We'll figure out the river later, right?
Yeah.
Seems like mistake. Feels like a mistake.
Pop calls because, like, what else are you going to do with tens with the 10 of hearts here?
Nothing.
On the King Jack 7-3 3-heart board. Pot is 345K now.
Okay.
The river's the 9 of diamonds, so I suppose a couple gut shots come in. 8-10 comes in. Queen 10 comes in if somehow somebody has Queen 10. But that's not a huge portion of either player's range, I would think.
Unless they have hearts with it, which they already got there on the turn with, so no, it's hard to come up. I guess Queen 10, not too much. Not too much.
So now as Minguk, I feel like we're in complete no man's land, in part due to the sizing that we chose. It's difficult to range our opponent. We didn't get that much information about our opponent's continuing range because we bet so small. We bet a fifth of the pot. So
we can literally have the best hand here still. Like Ace of Hearts could have c-bet the flop and then called that very small bet on the turn, and we just have the best hand right now, right?
Yeah.
That's completely in play. That's weird. Like, we didn't define really almost anything with this 50K bet on the turn.
So what are we supposed to do?
Okay. It's unlikely our opponent has a flush just because it's hard to have a flush, right?
Yeah.
There's only two of us in this hand from the beginning, and it was button and big blind. It's just not that often are they going to have a flush. So
Right.
we're not going to discount it completely, of course, but like, if we decide we want to rep a flush, now we'd love to have a heart in our hand.
It would be a little better to have a blocker.
If the 8 of hearts was in our hand, would feel great, right?
Yeah.
But still, it's pretty hard for our opponent to have a flush, and that's good. And so, if we want to bluff, it's not crazy to bluff here. I guess what I'm saying, because even if our opponent turned to king or was holding on with the jack on the turn, which I think they would, I think we can blow them off those hands with a good enough size bet here on the river, right? At least maybe not a king, but if we bet enough, I think a king is going to find it hard to call. Certainly a jack, right?
Depends on if they have any blockers with it, I guess.
Yeah.
And if that player is going to use blockers to make decisions.
Right. Fair enough.
I just don't know what to do.
I don't hate the idea of swinging for the fences right now, because we sort of put ourselves in this super weird position. Like, I don't know, we're the short stack. I mean, barely we were at the beginning of this hand, but we are.
Minguk is not the short stack.
Oh, sorry, the other guy's the short stack.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, same idea though, right? That guy's the short stack. We can put a lot of pressure on him. That's not so bad, right?
Yeah.
I don't hate the idea of putting pressure on.
I think we should bet big if we're going to bet.
I do too. Big, like legit, like this is going to hurt, if you want to stick around here. So really consider it. I think we should bet 75% of pot minimum.
It is almost entirely random. Other than us blocking 8-10, it's almost entirely random to have this hand and turn into a bluff here. So I think there's a reasonable option just to give up. Like, looks like we shot the bet on the turn doing some weird stuff. Let's clean the sheets instead of, sleeping in them.
Sure. And, like, we might have the best hand still. It might go check, check. He shows the ace of hearts and we win. It's possible, right?
Yeah.
I kind of like betting, though. I think I prefer betting now that we're here. Like, I think I prefer it. Like, we bet super small. Now we're going to bet really big. A flush might do that. A flush might bet small on the turn and big on the river. And if he has the ace of hearts, he's folding. If he has a jack and we bet, 300,000, 350,000, 400,000, it's going to be really hard to call, right?
Yeah.
Even a king is really not going to love their life. Especially, and he doesn't have to have a great king at all here. He can have a bad king. You open the button, right? Like, I think we should attack now that we're here. So almost coming back to what you were talking about on the flop of like, pushing people around and all that. We've gotten ourselves into this mess. Let's see if we can buy our way out of it. Like, we didn't have to get ourselves in this mess, but now we are in this mess. So we took the initiative. What was the point of that for 50K if we weren't going to fire the river? Like, we should have bet more or checked if we weren't going to fire the river on a lot of rivers, is my thought.
Well, Minguk bets 150K into 345.
How does that fold out a king?
I don't know.
Maybe because it looks like you're begging for a call? That's the only way.
If I were sitting in Pop's seat with 10s with the 10 of hearts, this size would concern me a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Because I would be like, okay, maybe he doesn't have like a pretty nutty hand, maybe not even a flush, but he might be doing this with a hand like 2 pair. Or maybe like he turned a straight draw and river to straight, or he had a straight draw on the flop, and like we block those things with the 10s, which is good. But like it feels kind of like blockery, like with a hand that you would expect not to be as bad as 7-8. You'd expect it to be better than 10s to be blocking here on this run out. Because
we only bet 40K on the flop, there's so many hands this other guy can have, right? The big blind can have. He can have king queen. For 1 1/3 blinds on the flop, he's got overs and a back door. Sure. Then he turns the king and he decides to bet tiny to block. Now he's betting tiny again to block. Tiny-ish, not as tiny. But still pretty small to block the river. That's completely reasonable, right?
Yeah, so that's scary.
We can raise. We don't have to call. Raising might be better.
It might be.
We don't have to raise big. We can raise small. We can raise really small. We can bet.
Yeah, because it does look really blockery. I think I like that. Because I think we're going to fold out 2 pair with some frequency if we raise.
I hope so. We certainly can have the nuts. I mean, we don't have the ace of hearts, but unless that guy has the ace of hearts in his hand, like we 100% can have the ace X of hearts here, right? Easily.
Yeah.
We're open all of those on the button all day long.
And we might raise most flushes against these sizes too. So it's not repping just the nuts.
I think so. I think we're raising reasonable flushes here. Maybe even baby flushes, it may be hard not to raise. I don't know. You worry about getting called. You worry about the game theory disaster of it all. But you probably have to raise against 150 most of the time.
Yeah, I think I kind of like a raise against these sizings. I think if Minguk went bigger, it would be a decision, but I might lean towards call just due to the blockers that we have. Currently, the blockers working for us feel a little bit less about the 10 of hearts and more about the 2 10s, about blocking multiple straights, because that might be something that Minguk takes a bit of a blockery route with.
I see what you're saying. Right. If he's got blockers, then yeah. Yeah. Sorry, not if he has blockers. I mean, we have blockers. I said that. All weird. Just ignore that sentence. I'm agreeing with you. It's me agreeing. That's how I agree sometimes. And it's fine. And it's good.
It feels like we need to put money in one way or the other. Calling is not terrible.
I prefer a raise. I prefer a raise.
I think I do too.
Let's knock out the jacks that are there in blocking. Let's knock out the bad kings that are there in blocking. If he's got a weird 2 pair that isn't king jack, maybe we can fold that out. I don't think we can fold out king jack unless we put in a monster raise, which we're not. I don't think we should do that. I think we should put in a very small raise. Like he made it 150, we can make it 350, 375, even. That should fold out a lot of stuff. If we want to really go after like top pair and good 2 pair and stuff like that, stuff where he may just feel like a little more inclined to hang on, we got to make it a lot more than that, though. I think we have to make it like 500, 550.
Yeah, which is risky. I think raising's probably better because I am very, like, I feel like I've been in this spot a million times and, like, clicked the call button and I regretted it. I was like,
it's
of course you
sucks.
Of course you have king 8.
Right.
You know, like,
right.
It's like,
right.
Why did I think...
You're blocking. You're always folding to a raise, like instantly folding.
Yeah.
I may not get the chips out. You don't even get a chance to ask how much. You're always folding. Like shit like that. Yeah, I think it's a take the spot moment, basically, right? Like that's the spot. Take it. It doesn't always work, but it's going to work way more than it's going to fail. Let's do it.
Well, Pop does not. Pop calls, but that works out fine because Pop gets to win the pot anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, good for Pop. Way to go, Pop.
That changes who the chip leader is. Although I don't know who wins the tournament.
I do.
It's one of these. Okay.
One of these 3 guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
good
for sure. It's a guarantee.
It's definitely Pop, Minguk, or the other guy.
The 3rd guy, the garbage human.
Yeah, it might be the other guy.
I was walking with a friend just the other day.
It's not Pop. I fast forwarded in the episode and it's not Pop. I see that it's heads up.
Listen, I'm telling you something now. No one cares who won. I'm telling you a thing.
But don't you want to know?
I was walking with a friend the other day, and he said to me, have you noticed that and he's not a listener. He doesn't know anything about the podcast, really. He said, have you noticed the way everyone uses the term garbage person now? Like, people say that all the time. And I'm like, I mean, there's a chance that me and my friend over here, like, sort of were part of that happening because we use the term garbage human. 10 years ago, we started using that, and we use it a lot. I don't know. Maybe we were part of getting that in the lexicon. I don't know. Maybe not, but maybe. So I don't think when you started saying it, because I think you came up with it, that was something I had really heard before. I don't think, but maybe you heard it somewhere.
Point being, we are important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah.
Yeah. So everybody should take note of that. All right.
Just acknowledge it.
And
if you see us,
give us money.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine.
Good lesson. That's the upshot.
Music is my sunlight, and all I need is one mic, and I can show every single MC how it's done right. Every time I come by, I'm bound to leave them tongue-tied. I'm sipping on liquor, a quitter is what I'm not. We got one.